Hey rail fans, and welcome to another Train Guy video. And today it's the Tees Valley. So I'm going to be looking mostly at the good stuff in the stream. I'll do a separate one about passenger things later on. So spent most of yesterday playing with this on my other profile, my normal profile. So hopefully I've got half an idea what I'm doing. Haven't specifically planned anything ahead for this. We'll just set Summit up and go, I think. So, okay, so we'll make the weather more or less, tell you what, we'll make it look more or less like it does just now at my windy. Little breeze, a lot of cloud. That'll do. So, quite a few different things you can do here. Let's see if you can remember what some of these are. So there's a lot of moving. They're split into sort of sections, groups of three of you. Like quite often you'll find that 3 in a row you can actually start one and just drive the whole sort of lot in one go. And then you've got these sort of out and back type things where you'll go one way along a stretch of the line and then drive the same train. Usually you're taking an empty one way and a full one the other way. If you see Redcar or Terminal, then the service either side of that will involve taking wagons to Redcar, either emptying and loading them, and then going back to, usually just back to Tees Yard, where they'll be moved on to the destination, in this case Kellingly. So really most of these are running back and forth between Tees Yard and Redcar or Lackenby. Lackenby's a steelworks as well, where you'll often take the trains as far as can't remember the name of the station now. It does mention it in some of these. Eagles Cliff, yeah. Going as far as Eagles Cliff usually. So let's start with yeah, let's start with just doing a run of empties up to Redcar. Do the empties, or will we do it doesn't really matter whether you do the full ones or the empty ones. You go a slightly different, well, you drive it through a different machine at the end of the route, basically. Right, we'll do Thorsby to Redcar. Says Thorsby, but oh no, in fact, well, yeah, you are basically at Thorsby. It's the good yards next to it. So I can't remember if this starts with us actually. Some of these start with you having to go and actually collect the train that you're going to be taking, and some of them start with you already at the train and hooked up. So I will be using the keyboard a bit more than I usually do for this. So yeah, we're all hooked up, ready to go. Oh, there's the Gronk in the background. The mighty Gronk. Okay, so before we go anywhere, I'm going to put a few lights on. So that's the markers on the nose, the instrument lights. That's all we need up there. Headlight on there, and if you need to, you can turn the brightness of the instrument light on there. So master key to on, reverser to engine only. Now what I usually do at this point is apply the locomotive brake before releasing the train brake. And we just need to wait for the reservoir to charge. There's not an exact science to it. There's not like any lights come on to tell you it's done or what have you. You just give it a minute and then go. I think we'll pop that off as well. Don't find that I need that really to drive these trains. I can see the gauges just fine. I'll sometimes pop it on just to remind myself what the speed limit currently is, because I've got a terrible memory. And of course, before we venture out onto the line, AWS. So that train brake should be fully released now. Brakes take a while to come off down the length of the train as well, so but we've given it plenty of time now. So yeah, the brake needles have returned all the way to 0. And we can get underway. Gonna lower the seat just slightly. I always lower the other one as well, just so it doesn't look so silly when you're looking in from the outside. So we'll just ease it out onto the line. Quite a lot of low speed running on this route. So we're just approaching the exit of the tease yard now, and then we'll join the line in start building up speed. Well, some anyway. Do need to keep an eye out for the signals as you're entering a main line. Sometimes you'll have to stop before you go out, and the brakes on these things, they take a while to stop. You need to be a little bit ahead of the train with, especially when you're pulling loaded wagons. Empties are a little easier to deal with. Definitely a difference between a loaded train and an empty train, though. They've done a really good job of that. So I think we've got a green. Yeah, that green's for us. Sometimes at long distances it takes a wee second to sort out what signals cover and what line, just because it's all far away and small. But once you've been up and down a few times, you start to remember sort of where to look for things. So there's a train going past over there, look. Steel train going, that'll be going to Hatfield, I think, is where the coils are taken, and you'll sometimes see another type of train carrying big slabs of the stuff instead of coils, and those are being taken to the DL steel plant in Motherwell for finishing. I don't know what that actually means, I just know that that's part of the steel making process, and that they used to move the steel from Redcar up to Motherwell to finish it. So, green signals. Go ahead and just move it onto the line now. We should start getting AWS coverage soon as well. So give it a little bit of power. The only thing you need to watch when you're accelerating with this train is make sure that the amp meter stays in the green. And likewise, don't let it go outside the green zone on the if you're using the heads-up display either. If it goes too far over into that top orange thing, the engine will basically short out on you. Not the engine, but you'll knacker the traction motors. There probably is a way to get it going again, but when I did it yesterday, I couldn't figure it out. So better to avoid it. I suspect in real life on one of these it would have blown quite a few bits of the equipment out if you did that. Telephone bell you heard there, that was AWS, unlike the one on the Great Western, which has got the sort of the nice soft chime. This is an old-fashioned telephone bell, like that thing up there. So now that the back of the train should be on the main line, we can start applying some power. just going to... Oh, got the wrong brake selected. That's always something to keep in the back of your mind. It's back down to 25, and we can... You watch the needles at the bottom here. It takes ages for the brakes to apply and come back off again, so forward planning. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Sorry, people that are putting things in the chat. I don't actually have my chat window on my PlayStation window, so it sometimes takes me a wee minute to notice that anything's there. Bilal, $24.99 I paid in pounds, depending on where you are. I don't know what it'll be in euros or dollars or what have you, but the equivalent of same as all the other ones basically. Scott Billingham, DSD, it's actually there, mate. Yeah, AWS is there. DSD worked a bit differently in the 1980s. It wasn't a system that sounded an alarm and you had to react. It used it used a foot pedal, but it was the driver had to keep his foot on the pedal all the time. So it is there, but they've not put it in as much as you don't have to sit holding down a button all the time. I think if you actually release it after a while, the train might do something unexpected. I haven't actually tried it, but the reason they switched to the system that you know now, where you get the little alarm every 60 seconds, is because the drivers used to put their toolboxes down on the pedal because it made their legs sore. So yeah, DSD is actually there exactly as it's supposed to be, and the AWS is modelled on this route, so if you switch it on, it will work. Yeah, AWS wasn't fitted on that stretch of the line, mate. It wasn't installed until the very late 1980s on the Leeds-Manchester. But it's present along most of the route on Tees Valley. The only place that there is no AWS is once you're off the main line and into the into like the freight terminals and the goods yards. So I can't remind what speed I'm. So it's a 60 now, right? Let's just pile it on a little bit. Yeah, man, it's there. It's listen for the little bell as I go past, as I approach the greens. Works as it's supposed to. It works on the 37s and the 101s. Actually, it works. It does work on the 101 in Transpennine, but literally the only AWS ramp that I think is in the game is somewhere up near the. Somewhere near the sheds at the Leeds end of the line. So when you're pulling a full train, you'll be doing well to get anywhere near 60 miles per hour at any point on the shorter of these runs. If you take one of the Motherwell trains, the trains to DL, they actually go the full length of the... Oh, well, not the full length, but they go all the way out to Darlington instead of Eaglescliffe. So you're on the quicker stretch at the western end. You'll get the empties coming in from Motherwell up to a decent speed. You might not get the full train going out going that quickly though. So we're doing 40 miles an hour. Only got a single local pull in this, so it's not struggling, but it's It takes its time. There, that bell that you heard, that was AWS. And if it's a caution or a danger ahead, then you get a horn that sounds. So I've got a feeling that that 45 that I'm approaching also has another speed limit change beyond it. So I'm going to be ready for it. Make sure that you've got the train brake ready, not the local brake, because the local brake is useless when you're pulling a train. Brilliant for just dinking around like local, but rubbish for anything other than place holding. Yes, wheel slip is modelled. It's very easy to do, especially with the 37. But if you're wheel slipping with the 37, you're probably quite close to blowing some of the electrics out as well. So it is there to a degree. I've not really noticed that weather seems to make a difference or anything like that, but they definitely feel like heavy freight trains, and you need to be careful with them as such. I have to say, I'm really enjoying it. I spent all day yesterday playing with this. Hours I put in with this yesterday, and after the first few minutes I was a bit like, oh, it's not very long, and you can see it struggling with draw distances, frankly, up at Redcar sometimes. And I was this really worth? But do you know what? After an hour of playing with these things, I was completely sold. It's brilliant. So we're just coasting along now because we're only a couple of miles to go to Redcar, and there's no need whatsoever to be barreling along. Bilal, yes, this is the diesel, the diesel electrics on this route. All diesel electrics. No, sorry, the 101 is a straight out diesel, diesel mechanical. How could I forget that? Yeah. There's the BOC factory as well. Over to the over to us left, the British Oxygen Company. So although I'm going into a 40, I think it does slow down even further, and we are about to go into a goods yard anyway, so we're just going to manage our speed a little bit here, I think. Yeah, the auto-gen hides the auto-gen. It also hides all the speed limit signs, which are pretty difficult to see. They were so... I mean, it's such a different way of doing things back in the 1980s. So much of it depended on the driver's knowledge. Oh shit, 10 miles an hour I've got to get down to, and I've been not paying enough attention, so we're probably going to go speeding into the yard a little bit. Either that or I'm going to come crashing to a halt short of it. But the rendering thing isn't actually that terrible. Even in the 101, I can't say that I found it like absolutely dreadful the way it was on certainly the way it was on early routes. Oh, way too quick. So this is what I was talking about, managing the speed earlier. We should be okay. Probably going to end up stopping though, because it takes so long for the brakes to now come off. If you watch this gauge down at the bottom here, until those needles return to zero, the brakes are on somewhere down the train. So, not the end of the world. We're a little bit quick coming in there. That's the sort of thing, again, you know, once you've done it a few times and you start to remember where you had your oh shit moments, those are the bits you end up usually being able to drive better than any of the other bits, because they stick in your head so much. Now, depending on how quickly you get from A to B, sometimes there's you could sit here and just wait and do the next part of the schedule, which is running it through the emptying machine. Sometimes just as quick to jump out to the menu and pick it as the next activity though, because it's sometimes a wee bit of a wait between them. Can you derail? You can derail in the sim. I did it once. I've not done it on Transpennine, so I don't know how easy it is to do it, but it is possible to do it. Although all that happens is the game just stops and it comes up with a message on the screen saying you derailed. It's the same as going through a red. It just stops the game there and then. As Matt Pedalston put it on one of their developer streams, it's a train driving simulator, not a train crashing simulator. Which is fair enough. Let's pop that on so that I can keep the camera outside for a minute. Still has that blurry thing going on around the wheels when it's moving as well, unfortunately. But I mean, I really can't complain about the attention to detail or any of that sort of stuff. It's all there. Even the sort of the surrounding areas, they've gone to town on it. You know, it's still what it is. It's a complicated game being made by a tiny little team, so manage your expectations a little bit. You can see there's still sort of a chop off with the draw distance on the track and things, and depending on the weather conditions up here, it can suddenly seem like things are almost fading out of view. The draw distance is a bit shaky sometimes. But if you're driving with, you know, fairly low levels of assistance and maybe without this thing turned on as well, you don't really notice the scenery so much, or I don't, because I spend so much of my time looking down here and at a fixed point down the track there. I think also because I'm an old fart who remembers when every game looked crap. I can still put up with it being rough around the edges as long as the gameplay's solid, and it definitely is on this. I cannot fault this at all for the play experience, or whatever you want to call it. Not sure how much difference that would make, to be honest with you, man, turning off the motion blur. Been that long since I've played games on a PC where I actually remembered what changing all these things would potentially do for you, but there we go. Oh, I've gone past my stopping point as well. Let's just whap the brakes on. That's really bad, you're not supposed to do that. That was a bit naughty, just whacking those brakes on like that. Okay, so I got like no points and I probably lost every point I had for doing that. I don't even know how the scoring system works in this game, to be honest with you. Right, so we could wait for 9:50. Right, what I'm going to actually do is, because I think I might need to actually change that set of points. Oh no, I don't. But rather than sit there just doing nothing for the next few minutes, we'll just go to the menu and grab the 9:50 part of it and carry on. A fair warning, almost the entire next 20 minutes takes place at walking pace. Maybe not that long, but this is... I think this is actually quite cool, this part of it. The getting to actually do the loading and unloading part. So we'll be unloading coke wagons. I believe Red Car Ore Terminal was basically a sort of a distribution centre where coal was brought from all over the country and then distributed to the steel mills in the surrounding area. Which is why sometimes you're bringing empties in, sometimes you're taking empties out, and there's loading and unloading going on here. I think that's what Red Car was for anyway. Right, so where we should have stopped, and I do quickly just need to go through the cab setup again because it thinks we're doing a fresh scenario, which we basically are. So we'll just we'll get rid of that as well. We'll put the locomotive brake on while we let that brake out. Now, because we're going to be doing a little bit of yard work at the end as well, we're going to put all the various lights on. We'll just turn them on now because we'll be going through the thing at the other end and then uncoupling, and I believe that it was standard when you were doing yard work with these things, you would put the reds and whites on. You'll see the 08 does it. Once you switch the lights on, the shunters have them one off like offset in opposite corners. Mainline locos would just switch the reds and whites on. We can leave our reds off just now because we are still technically the front of the train, but we will be releasing the... Helps if you put your reverser into forward. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to just move up to the unloader, and we can do that under sort of, if you like, normal conditions, normal controls. I'm going to be using the slow speed control to go through the loader, but I'm not setting it down here because now what I should have checked as well, yeah, that's fine. I just remembered after I'd moved off, you need to check your own switches, your own points. Hey Raider National Michael, sorry I don't see your messages straight away, pal. I've got two screens on the go here. I will notice eventually. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a great game. I love this game. Used to play these things years and years ago on an old Windows XP machine. Absolutely delighted that there's finally something like this on the console. Okay, so don't need to go any faster than 10 miles per hour when you're in the yard at any time. That little shed thing up ahead of us is the unloader, and I'm going to draw up just short of it. Or that's the intention. You'll notice I didn't bother turning the AWS on either. There are no ramps once you're in the red car yards. That thing over there is the loader. That's where, if you're filling your empties, you drive it under that thing, and if you're bringing in coal, you dump it on this thing up ahead. I'm just going to pop the first application in, maybe a bit early. This is the first, I find that my first run of the day sometimes a bit messy and clunky. I've not even finished my first coffee yet, I've still got it sitting next to me. Okay, so once the train has stopped, what you need to do is make sure that your throttle is completely off, disengage the reverser, and then you just set this to whichever speed you want, 0.5 mile an hour, 1 mile an hour, or 2.7 miles per hour. Unloading speed is 1. Now put your reverser back into forward, and release your brake, and just put the power on, That's all you need to do, is put the power on. You don't need to actually apply any, and I'll just drop the seat a little bit so that we can see this this a bit clearer. You'll now see that the train will hold 1 mile an hour on this second speedometer here, and it will just crawl through this on its own now. It takes a while. And I'll just pop that back on just so that I can see what's happening with the train itself. Station destination boards, they were on the stations, right? I know what you mean. Sorry, I thought you meant the destination boards inside the cabs. What other games do I have? This is literally the only game I play on this account to do with this channel. I keep it completely separate from all my other PlayStation stuff, dude. This is literally a profile I use for one very, very, very specific thing. I don't really play multiplayer or anything like that either, I'm afraid. I'm not good enough at most games to play multiplayer. I refer you back to the old fart part. I just can't compete. Which is why I largely confine myself to pulling loads of coal around at 1 mile an hour these days. So this can take a bit of time. You actually, if, depending on how quick your kettle is, you do have time to go and make a brew while you're waiting on this, or make yourself a smoke, whatever your vice happens to be, because you will have time to do it. This is almost like the wait at New York, except you've got something to watch while it goes through. This is kind of cool to watch. You'll see the mechanism underneath the car open up here as it rolls over. You see the little levers move. It's all automatic. It's all kind of pretty cool. The coal just goes through that grid on the floor, and it's conveyor belted away to another part of the complex. I live just a few miles away from well, there was one of these. There was a power station near me, and this is how they used to get their coal delivered. I had one of these big things for carrying it over into the station as well. It was cool. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I don't really schedule them, I'm afraid. I do them kind of when I think, oh, I've got a bit of time to spare and I've fancy playing with some trains. So welcome. It's good to have you here, man. Let's see, so about halfway. There's the loaders. We'll have a look at the loaders. So the loaders, it's the same deal. You just drive through at 1 mile an hour, except the coal pours in from these big hoppers at the top. What else goes on here? I don't think there's anything else here. I think this is just mainly for it's just coal that they do here. You see all those conveyor belts and things will be taking it off to different places around the area. I think there's plenty of room up here. Once you're out of here and you have to go and do the shunt though, there's 1 or 2 activities where it sends you down a really tight siding where you've got really not much room to play with. it's kind of good. It's a different. This is a different challenge to the freight on the German routes. It's much lower speed. You're doing a lot more of the really dirty stuff that needs to be done at the end of the trip rather than just doing the fun bit in the middle, which is usually the case with the Deutsche Bahn ones. It's good, aye. I've only played with the shunter once so far, but even that, I quite liked it actually. I wonder, I've not actually tried looking at one. Oh, we're nearly all the way through actually. Now that siren, that is not the that's not the Soviet hordes coming over the hill. That's tea break time or shift change time or something like that. It's supposed to happen at this time. I wondered what the hell it was the first time I heard it as well. It was. Wee progress thing up in the corner there as well. We're nearly done. Final Fantasy Remake. Oh, I was excited about it until I realised they were chopping it up into episodes, and Square Enix are just greedy bastards these days, so I would love it to be good, but we'll wait and see. Yeah, it's more or less it's very similar era of stock to the ones you'll have seen on the Leeds Manchester. Hell, you 37 and the 45, you can see the obvious similarities. So if you've played Northern Transpennine, you'll know your way around these, or you'll be able to find your way around these. Right, so we've finished unloading. You can just turn that off there. You don't need to do anything else at this point to deactivate that, and we're just moving up away from the unloader now to park, and then we do a run around of the train. We go up into a shunt head, and then the activity ends, and then the final part of it is to do a run around, collect the empties, and take them back down to T's yard. Yeah, I think it's like it's either like a shift change or it's it's an industrial alarm. I thought it sounded like an air raid alarm as well the first time I heard it, but it's a sound you hear quite often around those sort of sites. I don't think it's the shit something really bad just happened alarm though. I think those sound different. Or at least they do it there. They do it at the refineries near where I live. Hey Stephen, hi mate, how are you? Good to see you, bud. Yeah, Michael, I'm the same man. I can't help myself. They bring it out, I'm probably going to buy it. The only thing I've avoided so far is was it the 52 or the whatever the maroon one that they brought out for Somerset. I didn't bother with that. Right, this is the one where I'm going up into the incredibly narrow shunt head. We're going up into that dead end side in there, but it wants us to park the train actually quite far up here, and you have to go past the trigger point with the goods trains. Passenger trains you can stop short as long as you're on platform. The ore trains you generally have to take beyond. The local at least has to go beyond the stop point, or it won't trigger. So you could get out and do this, you could use your external camera to do this, and why I turned all the lights on earlier was because we are now going to be just running as a shunting loco essentially. So releasing the train brake, and then I'm going to switch to the loco brake because I think it's much better for running light engine. But I'm going to be going stupidly slow anyway. Ah, California. Ah, hey, you know what'd be good? That you guys, you're getting a high-speed train. I was looking at a video of that and thinking, that would be quite good to have in train sim. I like the Pacific. There's a Pacific route that I used to have for Train Sim World that was in Cali as well. I remember, I think it was somewhere south of LA. It ran. It was. That was good. That was one of the best looking routes I ever had for Train Sim, the original one. Unfortunately, my computer didn't get on with it, and it crashed an awful lot. YouTube alerts are a law unto themselves, mate. Anyway. I've seen. I take it the trailer. You're meaning the Final Fantasy one. I did see it, yeah. And like I say, I want to love it. I really want it to be awesome because that game. That was one of the first games first JRPG I ever played. It was brilliant. But I'm just. It's Square, and they're not as good now as they were 20 odd years ago. And they're chopping it up into episodes, and that just screams to me that they're going to be trying to gouge us. And I know I'm saying that while I'm sitting playing a £25 add-on to a railway game, but right. So now we're up at the head shunt. We need to wrap it round. LA to San Diego. That's the one. Yes. Thank you. Can't wait for the heavy freight thing as well, Stephen. I think that's going to be incredible. I'm kind of hoping secretly as well that at some point, I mean, they haven't said they're going to do it. You'll notice here I'm making sure that all the track switches are set. You have to do your own switching within the yard sometimes. So now that we've set the points, I'm going to... What am I going to do? I'm going to shut this end of the locomotive down. That's what I'm going to do. You can just reverse it if you want it. I just like playing with levers, being honest with you. Should have put that on first really, but never mind. Why are my instrument lights off? Because I've not driven from this end yet, that's why. Right. The brake gauges are not moving because I've got the local brake on, but it shouldn't take that long for the system to clear itself when there's not a train hooked up to it. It takes ages when there's a train hooked up to it because that is showing you the pressure in the entire system. Get rid of that thing again, I forgot that was there. In fact, we'll bring it back and we'll go outside because we're not going to be going very fast. Yeah, this is a lovely sounding machine. There isn't a diesel electric that ran on the British network between the 1960s and the 2000s that didn't sound absolutely incredible, to be honest, though. But especially these early generation ones. I mean, the engine they're using was originally meant for motor torpedo boats. It was a gunboat engine that was pushing this thing along. A wee bit naughty, going a wee bit faster than I'm supposed to there. This is long before the days of onboard monitoring systems and things like that. If you were really, really, really unlucky, there might be a supervisor with a wee police-style radar gun standing next to the line somewhere once in a while, but that was about it. So I can't remember if I think we actually will go back and pick up that rake again now. Depending on whether you're doing the loading or the unloading, it slightly changes the sequence that you do things in as well. Like whether the shunting is attached to the first part of the activity, the middle part, last part, sort of thing. Never played any of the Spanish ones. I played mostly I had the UK ones, American ones, a couple of Canadian ones, and a couple of German ones, but I never could figure the German ones out back then because it was all in German, mostly. So I think what I'm going to actually do with this is I'm just going to put the thing into reverse and do it that way rather than change ends again. Oh, fidelity. This needs fixed. This could be a lot more. I feel like there should be some sort of auto lock onto the nearest switch when you're at least nearly there. Other than that, it's not too much of a hassle. So let's just pop her window, stick where he needs it. Don't think I actually had that turned on anyway. Can't actually see the damn things anyway, you're just going to sort of have to crawl in and listen for the bump. Well, they'll still need to remember to go down the back and switch off those lights. So just giving it a little bit of power on when you're running light loco is enough to get you underway. Doesn't really need much in the way of juice at this point. So just cruise on in. There's no need to be absolutely hammering it. I believe 10:20 is actually the scheduled time for this to go anyway. Now the local brake you'll see is a lot more immediate as well. I can just flap it in and out again and it goes on and off. There's none of this sort of, unlike the train brake which runs off the air system. There we go. That's it. We're done. And I think... okay, so we can actually, we're clear to go straight away. So we can just do this is going back to T's yard, just before we get moving. We'll remember to turn all the other lights off. That's fine. That's what I was trying to remember. I've still got my tail lights on. I'm just sitting gazing blankly at it for a moment. Duh, what do I do now, Dad? Just realised that there would have still been some brake, some air in the train brakes. Right, now that those are released, we'll try doing that a bit more lively like. Okay, so can get rid of that now. I think don't need that. Quite easy to drive this train if you understand what the gauges are. Everything's clear enough to do. Everything can be seen clearly enough to drive it without having the HUD on if you wish. The accelerometer is not particularly important, I don't think, on this. The trains just take so long to respond to everything because they're so big and heavy and ancient that I find it perfectly easy to live without it. And in fact, I swear you get a couple of frames a second in some parts of the line back if you turn that off. I'm sure that accelerometer and all the other stuff going on in real time in that little heads-up display is chewing up some of the resources. There is a lot going on in there. So if you can, and there are a lot of trains that are just undrivable without it, it is a bit nippy sometimes, but if you can, I would get rid of that thing. I'd quite like a way to be able to choose what parts of that I had visible, to be honest. I'd quite like to be able to see the gradient indicator and to see the clock without any of the rest of it. And possibly a reminder somewhere of what the current speed limit is, because I always forget that, especially when I'm talking. Burble, that's a great word for it. That's exactly what it is, mate. That's the thing, I genuinely don't mind trundling around at low speed in these things because they sound fantastic no matter what they're doing. Merely switching them on results in a noisegasm. I should have actually remembered as well to check all the points before I moved off. I think hopefully these are all actually set the correct way. We're about to find out. In fact, I'm so unsure about this that I'm actually going to stop the train to check them. That one's too late to check now. No, that one is fine. Right, no, that's okay. I just remembered that coming out of here once, there were a couple of them set against me. Other times they weren't, and I just thought, oh shit. Because I didn't drive the whole entry myself as well, they would have been reset to whatever the scenario default is when I went back to the menu. So just be aware of that when you're in these yards. Not a massive inconvenience though. Weirdly enough, it actually copes better up here when it's a little bit cloudy than it does on a clear day. If you set it to clear, it's trying to draw so far into the distance that it starts to struggle with the stuff in the medium distance. And in fact, at certain times of day, you get this weird sort of semi-transparent effect going on. It's the kind of misting effect that I've not seen since maybe the PlayStation 2, to be honest with you. Old PC games used to use that fogging technique. Like I said, more noticeable at some times than others. I'm going a little bit quicker than I should as well. Just a dab of the brakes in and out really is enough to contain that. In fact, when you're running with empties, you can probably get away with a local brake to help you with that. If those were full wagons, I'd have to put the local brake to 100 before you'd even realise it was on. But empties you can probably just about manage with. The biggest problem with getting rid of the HUD is remembering which of the brakes you've currently got selected. Which is why you might see the thing popping up in the corner quite a lot there. I just can't remember what I'm using, so I press the button to see. Now, there will be a red signal probably up ahead because we are coming out of a... We're coming out of a freight depot, basically, essentially, onto a main line. So you do have to kind of be ready to stop in a very narrow sort of window of about 15 yards between the stop here point, the trigger point, and the signal itself. And if you don't pass the trigger point, the signal will not change. So there's the caution, and the red itself will be just a few hundred yards further up. Pretty close together. Signal distance around here is based on the signal separation is based on the braking distance around here, basically. So really, really close together. Compared to out on a, you wouldn't find them this close together on a main line, for instance, or rarely. 400 yards is pretty close, closely bunched. So I'm just giving it a little bit of power there because that is an uphill climb out the yard. So this is the tricky bit. Difference between that number and that number is uncomfortably small the first time you do this. And if it takes a few goes to do it, you're better to stop short and have to crawl forward again. Right, and almost as soon as you stop, that signal will change, but you have to have passed that trigger point. So before we venture onto the line, and just get the AWS on, check that the horn sounds, and that's it. We can get underway again. So release the brakes. I didn't let them go on too far, so it shouldn't be too much of a wait for them to release. And off we go. Right, I'm going to turn this back on for just a wee moment so I can see the amp meter. As soon as the back of the train passes that signal, we can give it some beans. There, you can see a difference in how smoothly that scrolling happens. The screen moves around just by getting rid of that heads-up display. Anyway, back to the noise. And it's a fairly straightforward run from here now to T's Yard. Most of the services in the 37 will contain themselves to the sort of the eastern half of the line. You'll run mostly between furthest you'll go is Eagles Cliff, about halfway along. Either that or you'll be going to the T's Yard, sorry. Between those two destinations and Redcar up at towards the east end. The exceptions that I've found to that are the Redcar to DL services, which, although they say are only going as far as Eagles Cliff, they do not. They go all the way to Darlington, which is kind of cool because it's you briefly cross my local line, the East Coast Main Line, even though I'm several hundred miles further up. But it's kind of cool to be on it briefly. Well, 200 or 300 yards of it that you get to drive on. But that is the quicker end of the line. The stretch between Darlington and Eaglescliff is pretty good fun. In fact, we might do that after this. We'll bring a load of empties down from Motherwell. There's traffic and stuff, and it's alright. Don't look too closely, I would say. That's a bit harsh. No, it's kind of cool. I mean, again, to me, it generally exists as something on the edge of my vision, and it works pretty well as that. It's kind of cool to see it moving around and stuff. And 10 out of 10 for them, at least trying to make it feel a lot less sterile than a lot of simulators often end up feeling. So you notice at full beans we've been at full pelt for a while now, and the acceleration is practically tectonic with a single unit. That's fine, it's not really a big deal. It sounds so good at full power, it's awesome. Oh. So I'm motoring along nicely now. I don't actually... Oh, that's the BOC place that we passed on the way in, isn't it? Is that BOC? No, that's not BOC. It's another big industrial building. Dorman Long. Ah, steelworks, isn't it? That didn't quite work. Sound effects all over this DLC are just so good. I get completely sucked into just listening to the noise of the train. It's a treat on the old ear canal, is what it is. Just gonna put a little bit of brake in it. Honestly, I can't remember all my speed limits along here yet, so I'm sometimes a bit more cautious maybe than I need to be, but we'll just make sure we're certainly not accelerating anymore. So reducing to 35. And we're already down to 40, so we'll just start releasing the brakes now, and much easier to do that with empties. If those had been a full coal train, we might have been cutting it fine getting over there for 35. And again, that's just a route knowledge thing. I'm sure it'll start to sink in. So further reduction can be done on, more or less done entirely on the first step of braking. Brakes are dead easy. The more you pull the lever, the more brake pressure you'll apply. So we'll be coming off the main line and going into the Tees Yard depot. Middlesbrough. I don't know, I'd be interested to know how accurate all this is. 1989. I mean, I know a thing or two about how the land records and things like that work, and a lot of this could quite. If a lot of this stuff's been demolished or renovated since the 1980s, a lot of this has to be guesswork on their part, I would think. Because while the records themselves exist, stuff like plans and photographs and stuff are much rarer than most people think. What tends to survive is just sort of the deeds and things that sort of explain verbally, or you know, they'll have it written down, the boundaries of a bit of land and what was on it and stuff, but they won't tell you what it actually looked like necessarily. So very curious about that. So it's a long, slow crawl into the yard as well, once we get there. slowed down much earlier than I needed to, in fact. Again, I mean, I was playing this all day yesterday, and by the end of it, I was quite comfortable with braking distances and what have you. You can do it much more tidily than I'm doing it at the moment. Right, so we're now off the passenger line. So it doesn't matter. Basically, it doesn't matter if we dawdle a bit now, because we're now on the entry into T's yard itself, and we've left the passenger upline, so it's, or well, the main upline. Points should all be set for you when you're arriving as well at the end of a scheduled service. If it needs you to check them, it will tell you to go via a location or stop at a location. It won't just send you blindly in. Or it hasn't done it to me so far anyway. It doesn't mean that it won't at some point, I guess. I'm quite glad I waited a week as well to get this, because I noticed that a patch had come out on I think the day before I picked it up. I don't know if there were if there even was anything wrong with it, but so far every single one of them has had something infuriating with it for the first few days. So I'd forgotten it was out, to be honest. Part of the reason I was late to getting it, but not upset that I've got it post-patch, because there was bound to be something wrong with it, just because there was. Virtually all electric signalling along here as well. There's a handful of semaphores on a couple of bits of the line, but I've not found anything. I've not found any horrible traps like the one that used to be on Northern Transpennine, which I don't know if they've fixed, where it was possible to go straight from a green to a red, and there was no distance signal or anything like that to warn you it was going to happen. Not found anything like that on this so far, so I'm quite comfortable running with the aspect display disabled. Notice that we're no longer getting AWS on approach to signals either. Again, that's just it's not on the, it's not in the yard. It's only fitted on the line itself. I just want to see quickly if this actually rejoins the... Ah, right, it does. So this is a through... Right, I get it, I understand now. I don't think I've ever left the yard heading west, but... Ah, so this must be the goods up line, right? Yeah, if this is a goods only line, it wouldn't be required at this point to have AWS on it, or rather, it would be on a list of lines to be upgraded at this stage. In fact, I think even today, if a line is goods trains only, it does not need to have AWS fitted to it. It's only a requirement when you're putting self-loading freight onto the line. Right, because I think over there is the passenger lines to the left. Ah, now I have been through here and left the yard going west, because you pass through the yard, I think, with the DL trains. So again, just creeping forward into this really, really, really narrow sort of window that you've got. Oh, there's the Gronk parked up ahead as well. So all I'm doing just now is trying to maintain a mile or two an hour. Might actually need to give it a little bit of, just a little bit of a nudge. Okay, and at that point, it just you get out the train and another driver takes it on to wherever it's meant to be going. So this is another one of these ones where, because I don't use objective markers, I've got no idea where the hell it wants me to go, but it doesn't matter because we've already completed the scenario. So that was a little round trip from the Tees yard to Redcar Ore Terminal and back. Takes longer than you would think to do that sometimes. It's less than 10 miles in each direction, but it's all done at low speed. A lot of mucking about at either end. It's cool. Like I said earlier, it's nice to get to do the... It's actually quite cool to get to do the getting your hands dirty stuff at either end of the run, as well as the fun bits in the middle. All the freight trains on the German routes, and I still love them bits, but playing this makes you realise that you're not doing much except the in-between bit. So let's gonna do the 37 again. But this time we're going to look at a different bit of the route. We're going to be coming down from Darlington. Let's make it a rainy day. And we want... Now, the service is going between DL and Lackenby, it's going to, in fact. Brilliant, that's actually different. We've not seen Lackenby yet. So the Lackenby DL, although the description says you're going as far as Eagles Cliff, the map itself shows you it's going all the way to Darlington. And the map is right, not the description. So I am going to just quickly take a comfort break for 2 minutes, in fact, before I start this, and then we'll get cracking, have a look at the fast western end of the map. Right, I will be right back. Okay, so let's be back. Let's just jump straight on into this. No mucking about, I think. So what we're doing here is the very last leg of a journey from Motherwell in Scotland. Steel, big, massive ingos of steel are taken from Lackenby up to Redcar, up to the DL plant in Motherwell, or near Motherwell. It's what's called the finishing plant. It's the steel's made in several phases, and they have to move it around. It's taken by train up to DL for finishing, and the wagons are brought back down to Lackenby for the next load. What that means is you get 2 locomotives hooked up to a bunch of empty wagons on the fastest stretch of the line. That's Darlington behind us, and that line to us left is the East Coast Main Line. So we're going to release the train brake, pop the local brake in while that charges. Supposed to do the master key first, but I do the brake first simply because it's the longest part of the process. Want that on. Want our instrument lights on. We want the headlight on. I'll turn the brightness up. Even the wipers make cool noises. So we do start this scenario at red. There's a passenger train going to be leaving Darlington in a moment, which has right away over us. There it goes. There's he off to Middlesbrough. So we'll be following that guy. So there'll be a short wait for us as he crosses the... That's the East Coast Main Line, just over there. All we're going to do is cross it and go off down a junction to the left there. Takes us out onto the Tees Valley line. But this, I believe, is the East Coast Main Line. Which is the line I grew up within a few hundred yards of. Completely different stretch of it, clearly. Aye. And the bit I grew up near had a rail freight yard attached to it, and a depot as well, a maintenance depot. So these last couple of British packs we've had, a lot of people are saying I want more modern stuff, I want modern British stuff. I don't know, I'm kind of liking all the stuff we've had so far, because this is like all my boyhood fantasies come true, getting to play with these things. Right, so we've now got a caution signal, but we can go, so let the brakes out. Got a wee bit of juice. Oh, I know what I forgot to turn on. Naughty, naughty. Imagine forgetting that, eh? So there we go, briefly on to the 125 mile per hour stretch of the line. And then we'll be going immediately onto the Tees Valley line. Even with a pair of class 37s hooked up together. 125 is just a pipe dream, I'm afraid. I just find myself looking longingly off to the right there at that high-speed line, though, thinking, there's a ripe extension candidate. Right, so even though that was a caution, I know that the next signal's nearly a mile away, so I don't have to, you know, slow down to a crawl instantly. I've got a little bit of time, and because the wagons are empties as well, it will perform a bit better under braking. And it sounds, when you've got the windscreen wipers on as well, it sounds like you're always dragging a brake, like there's a valve open somewhere. It's because the windscreen wipers are running off the pneumatics. So there's just always that hissing sound in the cab when you've got them running. So the speed limit is 60, but just being mindful of the fact that it was a caution I passed. I'm expecting that to have just been to slow me down for the points, but assuming that can get you into trouble and has caused accidents in the past. Bad one at King's Cross happened. Was it at King's Cross happened? An accident? It was just near King's Cross, I think, way back in the 70s, late 70s. The driver basically assumed that the yellow he'd passed was to slow him down for points, and managed to not be paying sufficient attention, went through a red and hit a parked train. I forget where that was. It wasn't King's Cross, it was somewhere down southeast. Right, so there's the green ahead, so now we can go. Always been the sort of the one kind of weakness of the British signalling system, I guess, is that it's essentially, certainly back in the 80s, it was an advisory system. It wasn't the driver could interpret what he was seeing. There was that many different permutations of things, and different types of signal, that on some parts of the line drivers got so used to seeing signals used in a certain way that they would assume that, well, if it's usually yellow just to slow me down, it's always going to be yellow just to slow me down, as opposed to it's yellow, there might actually be a red signal further on. Yeah. Speaking of speed limits, I'm still quite far below the one I could be doing. If I'd been paying more attention and not blethering, I might have actually got it up to 60 now. So we're going into signal. Thing is, we're not going to be there. I wouldn't have got a nice fast run the whole way anyway, being behind that Middlesbrough train. I am just putting a little bit of braking in because as we approach Middlesbrough, which I don't remember how far along the line it is, but that could be an all station stopping service ahead of us, in which case we're going to be getting backed off. Can't actually see it yet. Sometimes really late before you see the signal. Right, yellow. 300 yards before I saw that. And there we go. It was clear. I love that noise. Oh, it's so good. Oh, right, bit of speed management here. Okay. Ooh, tractor. I have no idea why I got so excited to see a tractor. This game just brings out like the inner small child who still wants to play with toy tractors in the mud in you. So not much point in us picking it up. We're going into a speed limit zone anyway. Just keeping the speed off for now. Just let that excuse me, let that passenger train ahead open up a wee gap to us. We're just going to catch him up again as we approach the next station anyway if we hammer it. So we'll get by him at Middlesbrough though. Length of this route, I've not really said anything about the length of it yet, other than I worried at first it was a bit on the short side. I think it's maybe only about 23, 24 miles line to end. But that's alright. Having spent a whole day with it, I'm quite satisfied that there is more than enough in here for me to again justify having spent what I did on it. Put it this way, by the middle of this week I'll have already had about £1 an hour for my money. And it's quite a varied little line. It's a nice line. It's not, I mean, this isn't like a trunk line like the East Coast main line. This is very much a you know, a sort of a secondary line, if you like, a rural line. It's much lower speed limits. You actually do have to drive the train, coping with the different environments at the different terrains that the line crosses. There's some steep bits, there's some really interesting bits getting heavy trains in and out of yards. I've managed to get one stuck on an uphill before and blew the motor out, shed the load, and that was it, stuck. The shunters and what have you. Yeah, there's plenty to do. Just because it's not 40 miles long or what have you, it doesn't mean that it's not as good as... It's better than Great Western by a country mile. So it's 2/3 of the length, but I'll take this over I think I'll spend a lot more time on this than I will on Great Western, from certainly the foreseeable. So yeah, absolutely no complaints in that department after some initial trepidation. I think this is a 60 mod. Is this a 60 mod? Yeah. Should probably keep an eye on the speedo actually, because it picks up much faster with a double header with an empty rake than it does on a single loco with a full train wagon, full coal train. The train wagon? Duh. Jeez, oh. I really, really like 1980s style AWS as well. I love the bell. It pleases me far more than it should. Now 60 is about the fastest speed on this line. Can't remember if I put my seat down or not. No, I didn't. That'll be why I couldn't see the numbers on the gauges properly. So there we go, down to 50 and plenty time for it. It takes a wee while for the brakes to come off, so it's just, the trick is just being a little bit ahead of them. Actually already pretty much down to 45, I think. And ready to hit the brakes in case there's another speed reduction beyond it, because I can't mind. Just ready for it if I need to. Nah, it's fine. It's 45. I think it's just for a corner. Is there a station along here? Hi Chris, welcome mate. I'm very well, thank you. I'm really enjoying myself with my new toy. Welcome. How are you, my man? I think I'm actually going a bit faster than that 45 as well. This will be a gradient. Ooh, speeding through a station. Naughty. Oh, and signal's gone green for us, so that's fine. I think I was only a couple of miles an hour over there, it's not the end of the world. I got my locomotive brake on or something. Oh shit, another speed limit I forgot about. Hey. See, the problem is I don't want to put the brakes on too hard, otherwise I'll end up coming to a halt. Right, more or less recovered that one. That was a little bit messy. At least I got down to speed for the station. Definitely recommend it. Absolutely loving it. I had a couple of quibbles with it early on. Was not sure about the... I wasn't sure, like, it looked really shit to be honest. The first time I played it, it was in clear weather up at Redcar and it was struggling to draw everything and I was thinking, oh my god, what is this? And then I started to play it and I thought, nah, it's actually really good. It will struggle a little bit up at Redcar. If you can overlook that, it's brilliant. There's loads of stuff to do. I mean, there's passenger services in the 101. Everything is active on this route as well. So your AWS and stuff comes into play. You'll go different places. The passenger route actually goes a different part of the route towards the end to the freight stuff. You go down a nice wee line to Saltburn by the sea, or Saltburn on the sea, I can't remember what it is. Good mixture of high speed and, well, high speedish and low speed stuff. Yard work. And it's the 1980s, I don't know, yeah. Don't know what else to say, man. It ticks all the right boxes for me as well. Highly enjoying it. Why am I crawling along here really slowly? I did slow down for a reason. Oh yeah, signals. There we go, so it went from caution to advanced caution as we were approaching it, so I know I don't need to worry for the next one. But because we're still following that Middlesbrough train, we'll give it a bit of room. Mine's is a launch day OG PlayStation 4, mate, with the teeny tiny hard drive and everything. It's not been optimised for the Pro, so I don't know that it would make any difference. I think it's more just do you know what I think it is? I think it's a really small development team who can't afford to pay programmers Activision money trying to figure out a very complicated game engine as they go, and I'm quite happy with what they're doing so far, to be honest. I'll acknowledge it looks a bit crap sometimes, but it doesn't really bother me that much because there's still a really good game in here. But I don't think having a Pro makes any difference to it. Remember that speed limit. You don't often get the signposts in advance warning you that the speed's reducing as well. There are a few of them, but they're a much less common sight back in these days, and they're much harder to see as well because they're those painted yellow things, as opposed to the modern sort of highly reflective, printed on a reflective plate. And they're quite difficult to see from up here in the cab of the 47, the 37 as well. It has to be said, much easier to see in the 101. But again, as I said before, in the last Transpennine I did as well, the guys that were driving these trains in the 1980s had 20 years experience travelling on that line before they were allowed to drive on it. They knew every inch like the back of their hand, so you know, not every inch of the railway had to be so heavily signposted. It was perhaps felt, and most of the time it worked. But the side effect is I find I'm a wee bit more reliant on having this information up here on the screen, just to make up for the fact that I've not been driving along here every day for most of my life. That's kind of cool. Oh, another speed limit coming up. We're gonna make it, we're gonna make it. Oh, just about. Make sure the brakes have released completely before you give it too much power, otherwise you can end up overloading the whole thing. You'll hear a bang and a pop, and then you won't be going anywhere. Even completely shutting the thing down and recycling it didn't clear the problem when I overloaded it. So this is the first one I think where it's entirely possible to completely end your game that way. Either that or I've just not found the buttons that I needed to press, but I did try pretty much everything. The bugger all in the manual or the internet I could find either that helped me. I think I might actually be going just a little quicker than I'm meant to be through here, but not to worry. I think that noise that's just started up are the cooling fans for the traction motors. It's all automatic. I mean, you consider these things were actually built in the very early 1960s. I mean, right enough, it looks like a shed on wheels to us in 2019, but it's stupidly advanced for the time, and especially when you consider what it replaced. Oh, that noise. So we'll just coast for a bit, I think. 45 is the upcoming limit anyway. So there's no point in going any faster because the braking on these things is, as I described it earlier, it's fairly tectonic anyway, so bit of forward planning. I bet you that siren's got something to do with that bridge. I need to look up what that bridge is. I've seen photographs of it before, and I feel like I should know what that bridge is. It looks like it does something cool. Ah, now, if you were wondering why I was braking, it's because I knew there was a 25 coming up somewhere. I just couldn't remember where it was. I got it, I misjudged it slightly. Oh well, not to worry. And in fact, into a caution signal anyway, so we'll start shedding that speed now, in fact. So again, brakes take a little while to come off, so it's Just a case of waiting for those needles to return to the bottom before you give it too much power. Be a lot happier if I could see the signal as well. Alright, there's the signal. The red, the very red looking signal. It's Middlesbrough, innit? So I'm just going to let the brake out and put minimum throttle in just so that when the brake releases there's something there stopping you from rolling back the way. And there we've got a green now. So yeah, it's the transporter bridge, thank you, yes. That's what it's described as in the manual. I don't actually know what it is, I've just not got around to looking it up yet. And the red signal we had would be that train that we followed all the way from Darlington. Just needed to get out of our road. So I'll just try and get as much of the speed as I can now, and then coast through the station with the engine more or less idling. And all clear from AWS, so we're clear of the what was in front of us, I think. It's not very far now to the destination anyhow, so still take a wee while though, because you got to do the last mile or so, the last mile and a half at 10 or less. Transporter bridge gondola. Ah, right, okay. Off we do the same. Oh god, I've not seen that for years. Oh man. I think I might need to do a little YouTubing on that. See what I can find. That looks like it might be right up my alley. Still 25, right, okay. We're going on to a 60, but I don't think we'll get anywhere near 60. How are we doing for time? 13:05, right. I think I might do something quickly in the Gronk after this, because I did one earlier and they don't take that long, to be honest. Have a little look at that, and then probably be time for me to go and stuff my face after that, and possibly later on, maybe today, maybe not today, at some point I'll do a separate thing for the 101 along here. We'll have a look at Saltburn and that nice, very, very nice little stretch of line. I did like it. Right, so we can briefly give it beans just for fun before we have to slow down. Don't really need to be going too fast now, because we want to make a nice managed, nice gentle approach into the yards. Probably could be doing some of this braking a bit later and what have you, but not to worry. Way too early there, in fact. In fact, that was just rubbish, to be totally honest. I think I should only give myself one chalky bicky instead of two for that one. So the those white lights on top of the signal, for anybody that's not seen them before, it's called the feather. It's properly known as a junction signal, usually just called the feather. And what those lights indicate is that you're going to be going off down a junction in the direction that they're facing, basically. If you see them above a yellow signal especially, then that will confirm for you that that signal is being used to slow you down for the points, as opposed to anything else. Normally you'll see it on the Great Western, you see it outside Reading, just outside King's Cross as well, I think. Not King's Cross, Paddington, of course, on that line. You see it on you see it on the Transpennine as well, I think. But the signalling guide to this game is actually really, really, really good. Finally, if you get the manual for this game, even if you don't have the add-on, go get the manual off the Steam, because it explains all the signals on all the routes, modern and classic. It's almost as if they've listened to people sitting playing it, mumping about how crap the manuals are. So this is all going to be done at fairly low speed. From here on in, 20 and then down to 10. And this can be quite an interesting little bit to navigate when you've got a really heavy train, because it's quite a steep gradient to tackle. This is the one I'm thinking of. So there we go again, a clear signal, but the feather telling us that we're going to be leaving this line. I think they're off, yeah, they're off. It's actually quite a long train. I'm gonna just nip back down the cab. Don't like being out the cab for too long without the HUD, and it's fiddly switching it on and off all the time. I mean, it's literally 2 buttons on a keyboard, but nevertheless, it's one more thing not tough to do. And once you're off the line, the main line, it doesn't really matter if you dawdle a wee bit coming in here. You're not going to be holding anything up too much. So we're going over the railway, we're crossing it. So this is where the steep climb comes in, because the railway climbs up and over itself here. And it was coming up this way, the opposite direction. I got stuck with it was actually one of these trains going back up to Motherwell, loaded with the big slabs of steel in conditions like this. And I basically buggered up getting onto the slope. Ended up at a dead standstill, and overloaded the motor trying to get underway again. Could not for the life of me figure out how to get it moving. Once I'd done that, I had to abandon it. So there's There's the lines below us. Carry on that way towards Redcar. And then you have to kind of be half awake here because you're suddenly going down a hill. But you're also going around a fairly tight corner, so you've got friction working against you to try and slow the train down. All these different forces pulling in different directions means that the first couple of times you come through here, it's really, really easy to suddenly scrub all your speed off and find yourself on a gradient with no way to get going again. It's alright once you've crested it. Worst comes to the worst, you're just going to be rolling a bit quicker than you meant to be. So you see the speed is starting to creep up a little bit now. And in fact I should be keeping it at 10 or below. Until the slope levels out. The locomotive brake's no good for this. It's just not powerful enough. Even though those wagons are empty, there's too many of them on a slope. It will bite and it will slow you down, but very, 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 very ineffectively. You're much better just to pump a little bit of air out of the brakes and then just let them off again. And because of the delayed time, it means they're on for just long enough to get your speed back where it should be, and it's really difficult to hold an exact speed. You're going to hover around a speed more than hold it exactly at this point. What you don't want is the brakes to come on enough that you suddenly find yourself having levelled out, or the gradient's changed and your brakes are on hard enough to bring you to a stop. Won't do you any harm here, you'll get underway perfectly easily. But it is annoying, it's just takes up time. Although that's sometimes half the fun with this game. Yeah, you switch on all the advanced stuff and you take away some of the assists and things. Stuff will go wrong, but when it goes wrong you got to fix it. And fixing it, that's fun too. I reckon anyway. So we'll just roll along here. Just give it a little dab of brake. We shouldn't pick up too much more speed. Just coasting along. I always worry when I'm in the outside camera when I suddenly hear a release of air or something like that. I think, oh shit, what's made my brakes come on? Even though it's nearly always not the brakes. Be so useful if that speed holder had a 10 setting on it as well, but never mind. It's not what it was really for. It's a shame you can't go into the engine room or down into the bunkers as well. That'd be kind of cool. Not that'd be much to do or see, like, but you can never have too many things to go and poke and prod and play with and what have you. This feels like the longest bit of the journey when you're doing these ones. This very, very slow crawl into the yard at the end. So again, everything should be preset for us. It hasn't made us stop on the way in. If it's telling us just to go to a location, then it's preset the route to us. Or it should have. Yeah, that's better. I need to be able to see the brake needles if I'm hanging out the window. You get a little bit, it slows down a tiny little bit, and you lose a wee bit of smoothness, rather. It's not so much that it slows down, you lose a little bit of the smoothness when there's a lot going on sometimes here. But again, it's nothing I find game breaking. Right, so the trick to this is stopping, essentially the stopping point is the locomotive is almost hanging out onto the points. It was the last time I did this. There's no signal to overrun though at this point, so it doesn't matter if you get it wrong and go a little bit too far. Oops. Didn't mean to put it into emergency, but not to worry. Oh no, we'll leave it in first application. So I'm going to actually get back in the cab first. I am going to get out and do this rather than my usual thing with the camera, simply because if we're going into going to be doing a bit of yard running, we need to make sure that we're all lit up for it. Now, you don't need to. I mean, the game won't punish you for not turning a couple of light switches on, but if you're anal as fuck about these things like I am, pardon my language, I really didn't mean for that one to slip out. If you really pay too much attention to detail, perhaps, then you might want to turn those on. And we're just going up into the shunt up ahead. Now you notice I didn't bother checking all the switches. It shouldn't actually matter because I'm coming in from behind every switch that I'm going to cross. And they will yield to pressure from a train coming from behind. It's not good for them, and you're not supposed to do it. And you can break them doing it, but they will yield if you come at them from behind. So I just didn't bother my backside checking any of them. And I think we just come as far as here, and then that's the end of the activity, I believe. And again, you have to make sure that you stop with at least part of the train touching the objective thing. Am we even still moving? Oh, I kind of came to a halt there. Oops. And that's it. And then the follow-on service for that is obviously to Nash back round, grab a full one, and do the same thing going the other way. Which I'm not going to do just now. So yeah, the ones going back the way, you have to go and pick the thing up and do a bit of switching yourself. But what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to go back to the main menu. Because that's two full things I've done with the 37 now, so we'll have a quick look at the Class 8. I did one of these earlier on, and they don't take too long. So that's fine, and yeah, we'll just do it on a nice clear spring morning, I think. And they do not take 3 hours each to do. They're 3 hours apart, but they take about 15 minutes to do. I don't know if that involves a cold start or not. We'll have a look. Right, I need to go for a very quick pee before I do this, though, so that will be 2 minutes. Right. Now, I've not done this particular one yet, so I don't know if this turns out to be 2 minutes long and then a 5-10 minute wait to do the next bit, then I'll just jump back to the menu and skip straight into the next bit. I've got no idea what this entails, how far away we start. Right, so it's already started up for us, that's fine. We will want to turn the markers on, name on, don't need either of them. There's not really actually that much to do on this machine. Is the handbrake released already? It is, perfect. Get the windows open. So I assume that I'll be going... Ah, okay. This is where the switches in this game are a complete pain in the backside. Okay. So my route's all set. You're better to sit on the left-hand side of the train relative to the direction you're facing in. So if you're driving, we'll call forward the end that the engine's at. If you're driving forward, sit on this side, and if you're driving backwards, you're actually better to be sat on the opposite side to normal, so that you're looking out the left-hand side of the vehicle as it's moving. And it's simply because all the little signals and the little ground signals and things are on the left-hand side of the track, so you want to be able to see those clearly. Oh, tell you what was probably not on. Master key. Ah, it is on. Perfect. And what we'll do is we'll just spin the instrument panel around as well, so that I can see my speed from here. Right, so everything's released. Let's go. Yeah, cold and darks would be good. I would really enjoy that. I used to do a lot of flight simming, and that was almost my favourite part of the thing, was bringing those machines up from cold and dead. And it is a shame there's not a bit more to that, I think. Speed limit's 15 miles an hour around here, incidentally, I think. Yeah, 15. I do like that. I like it a lot. And I like it a lot more on this line than I did the O9 on West Somerset. I know I keep bashing West Somerset, it just didn't do it for me, I'm afraid. But getting to drive it on this line, driving it as a working locomotive rather than a curiosity, is my cup of tea. So the two white lights are telling us we're okay. Cool. I used to love watching these things working when I was a lad. Our local Freightliner depot handily had a big pedestrian footbridge that went across one end of it, and that was back in the days when it was all still the old Victorian bridges with the wire fences along the sides that you could see through, so you could just stand there for hours and watch everything that was going on down in the yard. And the East Coast Main Line ran right next to it. It was awesome. Happy days. Right, so local brake again is probably the best one to use when you're just running the thing light. Somebody tooting a horn somewhere in the distance. That was certainly nothing on board our train or to do with our train. So the next scheduled activity is 9:30, so there might, unless we've got to do a bit more positioning, there might be this might just be a case of diving back to the menu and moving swiftly on. Now this I don't so much mind doing from the outside camera with the HUD running there. I actually quite like seeing what's going on here. That said, if you do want to do it entirely from this camera view, I need to actually, now you need to stop dead on it, so I now actually need to go back because I missed it by just a couple of yards. Right, so we're going to the stabling point now, so I just need to check the map, see what direction we're going in. So we're going back the way. Now these have been auto set for us up to a point. That's an automatic junction. We're going to be getting sent across that. We can't control those ones. Right, so we're going over to the stabling point here, which means we're crossing the railway again. So that was back the way, wasn't it? So what I would do at this point, if I was going to drive it from inside, is I would come over to this side, simply because, as you can see, the signals and things are over here. Oh, I didn't mean to turn my window wipers on. What an idiot. Right. Release the brake. If you do want to drive it purely from the cab as well, the problem you'll have is that when it tells you the distance to the trains you've got to couple to, it's measuring the distance from the cab that you're sitting in. So it'll tell you you've got, it's 300 yards to the thing you have to couple to, but you've got quite a lot of train between you and that. Just assume that every wagon is 20 yards long, and that will leave you a suitable margin. Stop. So if you've got 6 wagons, stop at 120 yards. Make sure you've stopped at 120 yards, or you're down to walking speed by 120 yards. You'll be fine. If you've got 10, 200 yards, you'll be fine. It'll leave you a bit of a margin as well, but it's a good sort of rule of thumb number to use. Should you fancy doing that? I did work that much out earlier on. And that was for the steel wagons. I think the coal wagons are actually slightly shorter. It's just such an oddball looking little thing, isn't it? So we're clear to go through the double white ground light there, telling us we're clear. And then this is the wee section with the points that we don't set. These ones were set for us from the signal box. And then it's 3 minutes till the start of the next thing's due to go off, so I think I'll just jump back to the menu and pick it up from there rather than sit about. Hey Nick, welcome man, good to see you bud. How are you? This is where more than once I've discovered that I've set the wrong track somewhere, but I think we're okay. Oh, I didn't quite make it right. Let's just ease it forward. It has to be so exact, and it's such a tiny locomotive. Right, there we go. In fact, I'm as well just waiting for 9:30, because by the time I quit out and reload the game, it'll be like longer than 1 minute 50 seconds. Let's see, what's an NS1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312? 1312 feel like that's something I should probably know what it is. I have no idea how to even work any of those controls. Well, that'll be that manage moderators thing. To be honest, I don't think I need a moderator, really. Watching somebody play with trains doesn't seem to attract much need for that. I'm not sure where I'm actually going to be going to do this. I think we go back down here and put these two short sections. Two of these short sections get put together to make one long one, and then you drag it back down here. Right, 540 yards going back the way. Best way to do this with the switches is to start from the destination and work your way back. That one's okay. 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 And we're going forward this time. Right, I need to concentrate a wee bit on doing this because I get confused easily going backwards and forwards all the time. Right, let's get rid of that hardcore. This is where you occasionally have an oh no moment when you realise that you missed one of these switches. So yeah, it's the two rakes of steel wagons that we'll be pulling out of here and putting together. Okay, there's a little bump there. That's when you know you've connected. Jump down. them up, and I think it's this one here we come back for. Yeah, it will be, because it'll be the one with the rolls on it, because the rolls go off to a place called Hatfield, I think. I don't know what happens to them there. And the slabs go off to Motherwell to have something different done to them. So you wouldn't be mixing the two up, I wouldn't have thought. So this time the switches should be okay going back out, because we came in on them. So we've got to go all the way back down here and then all the way back again to get another rake. I don't know how realistic that is and how much of it is just them adding distance on for the sake of dragging the activity out a bit. I don't really care either, to be honest with you. Right, reverser. Oh. Probably want to be able to see that from where I'm sitting. It goes a bit weird sometimes when you're trying to pull it round. I don't know what's wrong with the click spot, but alright, and we're underway. It's suddenly a lot less responsive with all that steel behind it. So we'll pop this back on. Yeah, so these are like finished coils of steel. We'll pick it up a wee bit. You can go, I mean, you're not going to be going fast in it, but you don't need to crawl around everywhere at 1 mile an hour. You just need to remember that you've got to get it stopped at the other end, that's all. Oh, am I missing some... I seem to be missing some chat. I apologise if I've not seen something here. I've got it on live chat, but... Oh, I'll give the computer a smack in a minute. Hang on. Getting the brakes on this thing, it's not that they're difficult to make them come on, but you have to hold the button for so long before it comes on. It's like, are you really sure you want to turn these brakes on? Like, yes, please, put the fucking brakes on now. The stops get a little bit easier now because you can run slightly over, because as long as any part of the train is over where the stop marker would be, then you're good. Probably going just a little bit too slowly, huh? Wish you could open those back windows as well, that'd be useful. But hanging out the windows just as good. Yeah, I agree about the manuals, man. Sorry, my chat is just suddenly giving me the last, I don't know how, well... honest, see, since Virgin Media started digging up all the streets around here, man, everything's been going funny with all the other services. Anyway, I completely agree that they just don't tell us enough. I think the problem is that they're so used to doing this on the PC. I used to play Sims on the PC about a decade ago, and back then, I mean, and I imagine it's still the same. A lot of it was the modders were like more closely linked with the developers and stuff, and people sort of got used to having to learn how to do a lot of things themselves for these games. If you wanted to use add-ons, you had to learn how to do all sorts of things in Windows to get these files to work. And so as the simulations themselves got more complicated, we all got used to going and looking up, like, you know, real-life training manuals for the planes and the trains and stuff. A lot easier to get those things back then as well, to be fair, online. There was a lot less... people were a lot less sort of nervy about putting things like that online for various reasons. I mean, good luck finding all the airport approach charts and things these days. But I think they've probably got into a habit of dealing with customers who have already gone and learned everything they can about the thing for themselves before they even bought the bloody game. They're now serving it up to a market who've never seen these games before, and they're not doing enough to help these players out. Really aren't doing enough, I don't think. And it's a shame, because I think it deters a lot of people, because you can have a lot of this stuff that I don't use. You can turn it all on, and don't need to use the safety systems and all that stuff, and it's still a fun game. But even without all that stuff, it'll still catch you out a lot. Just the pure mechanical sort of side of it, because they don't bloody tell you anything other than the very basics. Here's how you get it moving, and here's how you slow it down. If anything goes wrong, well, don't ask us. Probably before I release any brakes, I should do a quick route check as well. So where am I going to? I'm going to... want to change that one. Everything else should actually still be okay for the last time we were up there. But as the old saying goes, always check, never assume. Right, so we're now, route's all set. And in fact, because I'm going to be travelling in the other direction, I'm going to just move to the other side. That should swing around a lot faster, I feel. I'm going to just go down the back so that I can see the signal properly. I think, yeah, we've got the ground signals clear for us. We're fine. And that red is not for the bit of track we'll be on. One red signal that you will come up against when you're doing this as well is you'll sometimes see a red one with what looks like that ground, the two white lights from a ground signal. If you see those directly below a red on the signal mast itself, that's one you actually are allowed to go past. I think you need to phone the signal box first. I always do. I've never tried going through without it, but it does mean that you can go past at a reduced speed with permission. In fact, let's just have a look and see if this is one. It's not, unfortunately. But you see it has the little... the camera's still moving with the train. You'll see this little thing just to the side of the signal mast is where the white lights will come on to tell you it's a stop, but then you stop. I don't know why they use those instead of a caution. There is presumably an operational reason for it. Because I would have thought it's either alright to go past it or it's not alright, but... that's maybe my next useless fact to go and find out. So, approaching the rake that I'm going to couple to, I can't actually see the end this time. I mean, I can see the end, but I can't really see properly what's going on down there. The end of the thing I'm pushing is plus or minus a few yards, 120 yards away. So as long as I am down to a sensible speed by the time the couple to distance at the top left there is 120, then we'll be fine. As I said before, just rule of thumb, 20 yards per car that you're pushing, and that'll give you a nice margin. And 800 amps is your don't ever go past this limit. That's when you're back into bang and pop territory. A little bit sooner than I maybe was aiming for, but you're better to slow down too soon and need to pick it up again than you are to come thundering in here too quickly. I actually really do like this wee thing. It makes me feel all nostalgic. And I have to say, this is far more fun, I think, than the only real yard work that we've had to do up till now was on the northeast corridor, and I have to say this is way better. I don't know, it just, something just, I don't know, it just feels so sterile on the NEC now. When you go back to, especially the NEC and still to a degree the GWR, I don't know, they feel a bit empty and lifeless compared to what we're getting now. So we're at 170 yards, so I'm just going to keep it below a walking speed. I'm just going to let it creep down a little bit, in fact. So any moment now we should just get the bump. The locomotive brake won't do very much, but when we connect with the other wagons, I'll pop it on just to hold us in place, because it's a much more immediate brake. So now I know I should feel a bump any moment soon. And hopefully we've not rolled too far. I should actually be on the other side. How big's the gap? Ah, the gap's too big. That's annoying. I should have maybe come in just a little bit softer. The problem is the train brake sometimes sticks. It comes on much harder, but it sticks and it bugger. Oh well, not to worry. Right, I'm fairly certain we got that. Yeah, that's what I wanted it to look like the first time I did it. Right, back we go. I don't know why it goes all juddery like that when we're moving it back, but it does. Oops, didn't realise I'd left the throttle on, never mind. So we'll let the brakes out. You can kind of see the gauge from here. It takes a wee minute just for the brakes to come off the length of the train. Yeah, they should be off. Oh, they are off. So with a bit of practice, you could do that quite reliably from the cab every time if that's what you want to do. I have to admit that I much prefer doing everything from inside the cab when I can. Let's just reposition here. Right, yeah, so I can see that signal's going to be okay for us. Then all we do is we dump it in a siding, and then we go back to the stabling siding. Of course, there's no AWS or anything like that to worry about in here, so I don't need to worry about my brakes going on unexpectedly or anything like that. Now these sidings are all set for me, I think, if I remember rightly. We are in the right siding. Yeah. That red signal, don't worry, that was for the opposite direction. It's the ground signal on the way out as you're heading in the opposite direction to the one we were travelling in. So anywhere along here is pretty much good. Again, you just, as long as any part of the steel train is sitting on top of that bit that has the stop mark, then it'll take it. So just roll up to about 20 yards and then pop your initial application on, and you should keep going just far enough to trigger it like so. and I'll make sure this time that my throttle is off, and we'll just hop down and uncouple ourselves. Right, so we're going in that direction. That's fine. Just do a quick switch check, make sure that everything's running where it should. We'll change that one. Actually, it doesn't matter too much, I think, if you run over them going in the wrong direction, like coming at them from behind. Other than the fact that each bit of the track costs thousands of pounds to replace when you bend it out of shape. But apart from that, I mean, we'll let the brakes out. Much faster affair when it's just the loco that's going. And back over to the locomotive brake now for the rest of this, because that's more than adequate for stopping just the machine on its own. Much nippier as well without a train on the back of it. Sirens again. So just do a quick switch check. That one's okay. Alright, so these are that where I'm going? Yeah, so how's that changed? Fair enough. Nice one, Chris, thank you very much. You're more than welcome. I'm just about done anyway, and then I'm away to do something very similar. But I'll be back soon with the passenger part of the route, so hopefully see you soon, man. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I mean, what time? I'm going to just hop over to the left-hand side of the cab so that I'm on the same side as the signs and the signals. And go via means it's not our final destination, but we should probably stop to check the switches when we get there. In fact, the brakes are really quite good on this thing when it's running light. Right, so we're okay to the next bit. I think you can usually go past Govia, but I don't like surprises. Right, so my next signal, the wee ground signal, is a pair of whites. So we're okay. So just concentrating to make sure that I don't overshoot here. Okay, so next is to the stabling point, which is back to main. It's preset for me. Perfect. Love the noise of it going over those things. Right, so again, another really pretty small window to get the thing stopped in. But quite easy to do when you're running empty, running light local, because the brake is super sensitive. I think I'm like half an inch away from it. There, that is how ridiculously close you have to be. Okay, so that was a few hours of me just mucking about with the goods trains on the Tees Valley. It's only a small section, or a small selection rather, of all the stuff there is to do on there as well. I spent all day yesterday doing this and was doing something different. It seemed like every time I went out, it was great. Thoroughly recommend it. If you're a freight head, you need this. It is incredibly good. The passenger side of it, having a lot of fun with that as well, but I will be back to do that in another stream at some point soon. So that's where I'm going to just call it for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.